so lucky on Leeside to have somebody the calibre of Cónal Creedon. I remember going back in the day, and you can jump in on this if you want, not that you need reminding of it, 400 episodes of Under the Goldie Fish, Pancho and Lefty, The Passion Play, The Cure, Begotten Not Made. We're looking at things like all of the radio and the stage plays, the documentaries, all of the films you've made, Second City Trilogy, Cornerstone. I could go on and on. This is a man actually who really should be honoured on Leeside and spoken of in the same way as we speak of the greats like Frank O'Connor, and the Freedom of the City should be awarded today. No, I'm not joking about this. Like your talent is absolutely incredible.
If you cancel my parking fines, I'd be happy. That'd be great for a start.
Cancel my parking fines. Yeah. It is the most beautifully written book, and it's all prose that you've written in the past that you managed to just put together between two covers, and it's just gorgeous.
Well, see, the thing is, I don't know if there's this award thing that it's an award coming up this next month, right? And they were saying, have you anything coming out? This is like last March. And I said, I hadn't planned. And they said, well, it might be nice if you had. And I thought, this is something I wanted to do forever, but I never felt I had a reason for it. They've put together essays and all that kind of thing, right? And I love it, I must
beautiful.
Say.
Can I just ask you, because so much of it jumped out at me, and every single chapter is independent of the chapter before. But your relationship with your mother is so beautiful. Now, Connie Pa I'll talk about, but your relationship with your mother from the Beara, I got the distinct impression that this was a woman who was always longing and felt as if she was in exile from the beautiful West.
See, the mad thing is that as a child, you come into this world thinking that your mother and your father and you and your siblings, you're a bubble that just arrived like together, like in an egg. And it's only as you get older you realise that your parents, your mother, your father, that they had their own private dreams before they met each other, and that you were not part of their plan at all, right? Whereas children, I suppose, we're sort of self-indulgent, really. And next thing, it's only later on in life you get a chance, you see your parents as individuals. And I think with my mother, that definitely struck me because, she died relatively early. She died in her 60s, but she'd had 12 children. She came from Beara, like the most beautiful place in the world, but it was austere. They lived up, I won't call it a mountain, because a mountain would be the Rockies, but it's a hill, a very high hill down the ridge of Beara, a place called Adrigole, Cruha, and 10 sisters, and no electricity, obviously, no running water. I mean, my mother used to talk about the house. The house is still there, right? She'd say that at the left-hand side of the house there was this most gorgeous stream. The water was always cool and always flowing. In my naivety, I asked that was an aesthetic water feature, not realizing that was the running water, and that it was really special. That she was saying this is really special. What was special was the functionality of it rather than the aesthetic of it, And then I suppose she did have all these children, and I think my father must have seen that lonesome look in her head, in her eyes.
This is beautiful, lads. Yeah.
And he would just pile us all into the car and hit the road west, and we'd close the shop and we'd go. Stay up all night with her sisters. She had 2 sisters still there and a grand-aunt. And we'd all pile in the car, get back to Cork in time to open the shop next morning, And the mad thing is, I have Chinese friends. They were one of the first wave of Chinese who came in, well, not maybe second wave, around the 70s or 80s. And when the mother died, the father went back to Hong Kong, but the 2 daughters stayed. And I said to them, what did your parents do? Like, did they go to the pictures? They said, no, we'd all hop in the car and we'd drive to Athlone because we had cousins up there, and then we'd drive back down. And I said, gee, that sounds like us, So in a funny way, we, like on Coburg Street from Beara, like the O'Sullivans from Beara, the Griffins from Kerry, the Moores, all different shops. We were New Cork 100 years ago, and now there's a new generation. Yeah. There's a Pakistan shop, a Brazilian shop, a Polish shop, a Russian bar. And the mad thing is, I've talked.
This is all around 3 Points, or all around
on my street where our shops
Pine
used
Street,
to be, right?
Yeah.
Like O'Sullivan's shop now is belonged to a man from Pakistan, and I was talking to a guy recently. He was saying, it's amazing. He said, we go home every year. We still do go home to wherever, right? And he said, no, his daughters don't really want to come anymore, and his daughters are playing camogie.
I know.
Because they are Cork.
Yeah.
It's like me being from Cork City.
Absolutely.
And me not realising
that bond is broken with that generation.
Yeah.
But you didn't break, like, for instance, you write beautifully about your mother, and then you visited and stayed with your relations down west. You did something similar then in a beautiful piece of prose where
Oh,
you
down
did
to my Uncle Jack, of
where-
course,
you
yeah.
did,
Yeah.
and that was just beautiful. And you did the same then in Inchigeela,
Yeah, well-
literally just visiting those people that your mother and father came from, drinking tea and apple crumble.
And I found it late in life. Like I
Yeah,
didn't-
oh, it was
like,
later in life, yeah.
So like I thought when I say late in life, maybe the last 20 years, I find myself going that direction. Although like the car actually, sometimes I'm driving to Waterford and I find myself out the Macroom Road, right? Saying, what's happening here? It's like autopilot, and I don't have a Google Maps or anything, but the car just knows where it wants to go, right?
But you know, you say for someone who recoils from nostalgia, and this is in the book, your words, not mine, you write it very well. I mean, when I look at this book and others that you've done in the past, your books, your plays, and your prose, it's like a long-running autobiography with some very personal parts in it. But that is nostalgia, though, isn't it?
I suppose it could be called that, but as I see it, I think what it's clocking the changes, right? Like, so for example, like I don't miss the past at all, right? Really, and I'm really enthusiastic about what's coming down. I was tragically struck when all the shops closed in the 90s, and I remember people saying, "Oh, the supermarkets are here," right? And a woman saying to my mother, like, "Sure, these shops are gone. You get free bags over there, right?"
Yeah.
And another woman said, it won't be long now, and they'll be charging for them as well, right?
Yeah.
And just sure enough, it's 25 cent a bag now, right? But
Yeah.
the point is that I think it's that. So it isn't like I don't lament or like sort of feel sorry about the past as such, but I think it's important to clock it to see where we're going. And realistically, the only reason I don't want to die is because I want to see what's coming down the track. I've known, I'd love to see what place going to be like 100 years time. Or,
Yeah. But you do write very powerfully. There is a particular chapter. It's called The Accidental Author. It talks about how you started to write and the shyness about what you were writing. But you also talk about, in that period of time, the recession, the Slattery bus, the closure of Fords and Dunlops, and a massive impact on people.
It
brings
huge
it all
impact.
in the book. It just brings it all back to. I'd forgotten most of that.
Yeah, and most of it, in a way, it's more history. It's than nostalgia, like, because I don't charm it that much. And even the other day, I had a big chat with a guy about pirate radio, and you try to look at what was going on then, and there was nothing else going on, and it was the maddest time. Really,
That was I wasn't aware of that, because in the book you talk about being on the fringes of pirate
Very
radio.
on the fringes
You
of
were
it, yeah.
you were a high flying sales exec, were you?
Not really. I've been chased out of shops.
Selling ads for Dan
yeah.
Noonan on Radio City or
And
something.
it's in fact, I remember once going into a shop in a jewelry shop that is still there, right? And he said, "Come back tomorrow." So I came back the next day with my white sneakers and suit on, right? And he was chatting away to me, and then he said, "Do you know who this gentleman here is?" And I said, "No." Dermot O'Dwyer, who was a very famous policeman in Cork back then. It was like Keystone Cops. He was chasing all the baddies, right? And I said, "No." He says, "This is Dermot Dwyer." And I said, "Oh, why?" And Dermot says, "He's okay." And he says, "If Dermot says you're okay, you're okay." So they took the ad, right? Of course, Dermot is from Beara, so why wouldn't he say I
The
was
connection
okay,
to
right?
there, yeah.
But I didn't know him. I didn't know him at the time.
And Connie Pa, I mean, there's
Yeah.
some beautiful. There's some beautiful passages in the book about your dad. One has to do with the death of. You're big into your pets and your dogs, right?
Absolutely.
And the mark of manhood. But your dad is there for you on the stairs when you literally are lamenting the death of a dog.
Of T-shirt.
Of T-shirt, the
Yeah,
dog.
my dog called T-shirt, yeah.
That's so gorgeously written. But Connie Pa,
But the other story that my father told me about his uncle Jeremiah, and how Prince went out onto the street and cried when Jeremiah died, and suddenly the next dog in the street started crying, and eventually every dog for like about 10 miles around cried right through the night. Obviously it was an organic thing. It wasn't, but he was saying they were lamenting Jeremiah, like they were saying goodbye. Of course they weren't. They were howling at each other, right? But when he told me that, I said, "I get it,
did you get that from him? Because the book shows that he was a terrific storyteller and he could spin a yarn like nobody else.
He was, but he wouldn't be a joke teller either. He would just he'd a very.
Was
in
he
the
philosophical or something?
He'd stand at the shop talking. I'd like to Taylor Nancy, really. Talking. He'd talk away all day, right? Bit like me, I suppose. But and people would come in talking to him because that's what shops were like back then.
And he piled a load of Mon boys, because he was the bus driver, right?
Yeah.
So he piled a load of Mon boys into the bus,
Well-
and you headed for Ballybunion.
Yeah, well, it was Theo, a neighbour of mine. I met him and he said, "Do you remember?" And I was saying, it's like me reminding you of your past. I said, "I actually had forgotten that." He said, "Yeah, we all went around the corner and hopped on the bus. It was the guys from around the street and the girls and off to Ballybunion, like about 4 hours in the bus to get there, right?
The
Bumpers,
dodgems.
ice cream.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's
The chips with loads of salt and vinegar.
the difference between a dodgem and a bumper. That in Ireland we call them
The
bumpers,
bumpers.
because we go for it, whereas in England they call it dodgems because they step out of the way of it, and that's about it. Yeah.
He was an incredible man, though, wasn't he?
Well,
He was just.
I look at the two of them and see everybody's parents are really special, and it always makes you feel a bit strange when I get the odd bit of someone saying something nice about what I do, or you get an award or something, because I realise that what I'm doing is what I love doing. These people, my God, and not just my people. Like, I mean, every house in the street had parents like them. Just crowds of kids and crowds of, like, there was no end to it, right? And there was any dream they had, just forget about it. Whereas I'm constantly dreaming of something else in the future, and maybe you are, or an aspiration to something. They had to give that up very early in life, right? Because this was full on day to day, right? And like, we weren't living in austerity. We were but getting by was a full time job, And,
Yeah. You do the passage on the year Ireland was discovered by the Irish, and you say it's very clever because you talk about it was the time when John Hind was back in business. Because everyone was sending postcards because we couldn't go anywhere else. You went to Inishturk or something.
Yeah, Inishturk.
Because Fiona's from there, isn't she?
Absolutely. And the maddest thing is that we went there, the island had just opened up because of COVID, right? And so you couldn't stay there. And people were very cagey. They didn't really want to talk to you because bringing the infection was, people were very concerned of that. But we got off the boat and asked the first person we met, or Fiona said her granduncle or her grandfather came from here, right? Straight away he said, "Oh, sure, you'll be packing your tools, people," right? And off we went, and sure enough, like about 3 miles in and up round the back, and when they saw us come into the place, they didn't know who we were because they were on phone, and they were saying, "Clear off, this isn't the public road, right?" I was saying, "No, we're back." I'm Peter O'Toole's daughter, right? Our granddaughter, right? And it was quite incredible. The whole family came out, and we had a major chat outside the house because you couldn't go in because of COVID and stuff, and then we all went back. It was very special. And then that night we stopped in Kinvara we had to sit outside and drink coffee because you couldn't go into pubs or anything, right? And this woman started to sing song, and I thought there's no drink involved, and we were all in bed by 9.
So it really was when Ireland discovered what it's like to be Irish.
And discovered Ireland for the first time.
Because everything got derailed and we had to kind of think differently.
Yeah, and I suppose it was the first time that we probably, like in our development as a country or as a nation, whatever you want to call it, that we had actually cash to become tourists in our own town, in our own place, right? Before that, previous generations didn't have that kind of money to be staying in places like B&Bs or hotels.
Who were the downtown dirty faces?
That's just a name I put on the bunch of guys that we used to knock around when we were kids. And I put that on
Devonshire Street, Leitrim Street,
Coburg
Pine Street, Coburg Street.
I wrote a bunch of kids' short stories that were on the radio on RT years ago, and I called them The Adventures of the Downtown Dirty Faces. And it was about young fellas breaking into cinemas and all that kind of, letting each other in the
exit,
door
the emergency
kind of
doors.
stuff.
Yeah.
All that kind of chaos that we'd be up to. I was thinking about the Crawford Gallery closing, right? And when we were kids, we used to see we'd no playground. Henry Condon lived across the street from there,
Yeah, he did, in the Doll's House, which is now Starbucks. Yeah, that was a gentleman's club.
There was a club upstairs, but they were there, and Faster Finance were on the ground floor. They were like lending people, but the Condons were behind it. But we used to go into the Crawford Gallery for a chase off the man. That was our game, right? And I said, God, I'm going to really miss this place when it closes, right? Because I got a feeling when it reopens, the stairs up the back and around the side that we all knew so well, it probably be more streamlined, But
I know that the downtown dirty faces played soccer all day on the road, and you wrote some beautiful prose on that, where a lad lost his life and everything because it was the arrival of the car on the street. But I got a beautiful piece in from James O'Hearn, who was talking about the football rules from when we were kids, and I think you can remember that. Obviously, that even if the score was 20-0, whoever won the next goal won, kind of stuff.
Wins, yeah.
There was no referees, or there was no such thing as offside. Whoever owned the ball got to call all the shots. That was the way, wasn't it?
It's my ball and I'm going home.
Yeah, that's right.
Go over and get him. He has the ball.
The goals were 2 rocks or 2 jackets.
Yeah. Or in our case, always gates, because there was gates downtown, so it'd be the gates of Mackenzie's or the gates of the
rattling
hotel.
off the Mackenzie's gate.
Yeah.
And when you write it, I can hear the sound of that, and I can hear the kids playing, because we all did that, and it went on all day.
Yeah.
But because you talk about being the accidental author, and you actually first, when you wrote, because you would be out in the car, the old Volvo, scribbling like in jotters and copybooks, but not knowing what to do with it.
The mad thing, Neil, is I actually have a bag at home of all this stuff handwritten, only because I gave them to my nephew to type them for me. Because at the time I couldn't type, right? And I didn't have computers; they didn't really exist. I'm sure the toaster was about as far advanced as mankind had got at that time. It was a long time ago, right? But sure enough, he left home eventually, and my sister was clearing out his stuff, and he'd all my stuff packed in, all handwritten and chaotic.
Thank God.
Well, I don't know.
No, thank God, because you said, I don't want to spoil the book. But that's it. I mean,
but I'm talking about stacks. Like, I was saying, God, what? I was doing all that in the car. Amazing.
So when and this was while you were in my beautiful laundrette and doing the business. I won't even talk about Newfoundland because I haven't got time. But you actually in '79. That's what. Okay, Canada's one thing, but Newfoundland is another ball game entirely.
Yeah.
But when you started writing, you were so shy or self-conscious of what you were writing, you bring it to the secretarial service and pretend it was somebody else's work.
Well, the mad thing is that, first of all, the secretarial service are gone because now everybody can type.
Yeah.
Because we've learned, because of keyboards. But yeah, McCurtain Street had 2 or 3 of those, where people learned how to type. And then you'd go and get a job in a solicitor's office or whatever.
And would you say that I'm doing this for a pal?
Oh, I actually have the folder at home. Sean Murphy was the name I put on it.
Oh,
and it was like an blue Anko folder I had, right? And I'd say, Sean asked me to drop them in, right? But of course, after the second or third story, they knew that I was Sean.
And then they started commenting on the work.
Saying things like, that was very sad there, what happened there, your man, right? The kid that died, or, yeah. And then, so, truthfully, they would have been my first reviewers and our first sort of sense of having an audience.
Exactly.
And you know yourself, like, you can play records at home. It's a whole different world when you're playing records to an audience of even one, and suddenly it sharpens your game really quickly when you think, oh, they're going to be reading this stuff. I thought they were just typing it.
Years later, you read Pancho again because you had to get a copy from someone, because you're a giver aware, aren't you? You give everything away.
I'm inclined to. I was telling you there, I don't know if I was telling you, but I actually gave away my car once. Right? That caused fierce trouble at home, right? What are you at doing? You're like Jack and the Beanstalk. I said, Rock, these lovely beans. Don't mind those beans.
But when you got it then and read it again, 25 years after you wrote it, you were critical of it. What piece have you written in all that you've written in the past are you most proud of?
Oh, Lordy. Do you know what? I really think Passion Play the novel, for me, means a lot.
Unbelievable.
Because I think it captures something that, in a way, we've forgotten, which is bedsit land. And especially in this day and age of no housing and no place to stay, and kids 30 years of age can't leave home, because there was this mad rush to, I suppose, sanitise health and safety, whatever you want to call it, of bedsits. And like back then, everybody, the word being gaffed out, it was actually, parents were actually horrified when their kids would gaff out, because it was a big insult, right? He's left home, don't tell the neighbours, right? He's 25, he's after leaving home.
There's a bedsit on Wellington Road or Charlemagne Terrace, for me anyway it was.
But what happened is you start in a small place. I remember one bedsit where if there was 2 people in the room, one would have to stand up, but you'd be talking to their crotch, like.
So Passion Play, and
because
I can't disagree.
People call it the Bedsit Bible, actually, because it's set on Good Friday, and the guy takes his own life, and he
oh man,
he gets a vision of heaven at the end of it, kind of stuff.
It's so worthwhile. Waterstones carrying all of your back catalogue?
They're great. I tell you the truth, John Breen and Waterstones, the whole lot of them, actually, they just reach out to me all the time, and they had me in there yesterday, and And now it's become like my drop-in centre. I go in there if I need a bit of counselling.
I highly recommend every single thing that you've ever written, and people should start
I'll
with
just say,
Spaghetti
Neil,
Bowl
I'm
and
gonna
work
leave 3
on.
books here
Oh, you're so good.
for your people. And can I just say 2 things before you go? You're probably running out the gap. Do you remember a time in Cork when we only had the straight road? We had the dual carriageway. I was with my nephew and he was saying, how do I get to? And I said, go down the dual carriageway. And he said, which one? I said, there's only one. He said, no, there's not. There's 100. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, look, go down to the roundabout. And he says, which roundabout? And I said, the roundabout at the end of the dual carriageway, past Silver Springs. And it was like, okay. And then I realised I'd fallen into the generation gap. You might call it nostalgia, but there's a generation gap.
I'm still doing that.
So the point is, there's 3 books here, and the questions I would ask your listeners are: number 1, what is a 50?
What is a 50?
In a Cork term, what is a 50? Number 2, where was the outdoor bats? Where was the indoor bats? That's number 2. And number 3, where was the dual carriageway?
Okay, where was the dual carriageway? What is a 50? And where were the outdoor bats? How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 8 sisters and 3 brothers. So there's 12 of us, yeah.
I got a text from a brother of yours, a well-known broadcaster.
Go on.
He says, congrats from brother John on the road. You never lost it, kid. See you for a game with 3 goals in down on Pine Street after the show. Bags not be in goal. Big love, John.
Well, they are now. I only paid him a £5 for that. No, I didn't. And love it to hear from all.
One and only John Creed. Isn't that lovely?
Very sweet.
Yeah, because you're a sweet guy.
And isn't it sweet that he's listened to your programme? An old friend and an old colleague.
He's got good taste.
Absolutely.
That's all I can say. It's great to see you. I'll see you at Crispa time with John Spillane when you're heading out for the new brogues.
Bless you, brother.
What are they again? They're the loafers, are they? The docks?
Yes.
In ox blood?
But I'm getting no. Now we're going to Echo very soon.
Could I go with you actually? Because I've never got a pair of Doc Martens. Would that spoil the tradition?
No. Come on. A friend of mine came from Dublin about a month or so ago, living in Sligo, but he came out. He wanted to buy a pair of Docs, so he came out to Cork.
Lads, Cónal Creedon gets a new pair of Docs every Christmas week. If it doesn't spoil the tradition,
it won't. And James is a great guy. He'd love it.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thanks for the books. Listen,
So
we've got
drop
3 copies to give away of Spaghetti Bowl. You know the questions. Pick up the phone 0818 104 106. See you Christmas time. Great to catch up, Cónal. Mind yourself.
Okay.
One of the greats, the great Cónal Creedon. Lines are open for those 3 books. Listen, and I just say a very quick hi, if you don't mind, to Diane. Diane, I won't keep you. Good morning.
Hi, Neil.
How's it going, guys? Where are you all? Terence McSweeney Community College?
In Knocknaheeny.
Okay, so we should have yourself and Lorraine and Mags and Pat and Rose and Terry and all of the contractors and all of the workers. You've won Free Food Friday for this week. You're going to be delivered a whole feast of Dominoes. All right. Don't choke on it.
I know. Thank you very much, Neil.
All right, have a great weekend. Enjoy the food. It's on the way, courtesy of ourselves and Domino's. Our lines will stay open. Text 0868 104 106. Thank you to Emer, thank you to Viv, and thank you to Seamus again this week. And the one and only Cónal Creedon. The book is called Spaghetti Bowl. If you're not lucky enough to win it, head into Waterstones and see all of his back catalogue. Have a good weekend.